Hi, Katie Anderson here, and I want to talk with you about how I see the top 5 trends in the future of work as we're emerging from the pandemic and moving into the future from 2022. I was recently interviewed by Authority Magazine about my thoughts reflecting on the past few years and looking into the future. And I wanted to share some of these 5 trends that I'm seeing out in the world and how they impact us all. I encourage you to read the article for all the full details, as well as the links here below as well. So, the first trend that I'm seeing is a continued connection to purpose. And so, this is really maintaining what we've known all along, that people need a connection with purpose. And this is one of the key aspects of what a leader needs to do, is to really make sure everyone understands the connection to the purpose of the organization, as well as what their own individual connection is to creating the value and delivering on the services that their organization provides. So this is really important around leaders both setting the direction and setting the challenge, but also behind it, what's the real purpose for the organization and then for the individual. Many years ago, I had a chance to visit a company called Auto Leave in Utah, and I loved their connection to purpose. It was "We save lives." And they are a seatbelt manufacturer, among other things. And everyone from the senior executive down to the people, the cleaners, and working on the front lines understood their connection to how they were helping save lives through the work that they did each and every day. And I also love how Toyota thinks about this. It's not just what the company produces, but also about making people first. So Toyota's motto, or one of their few mottos, is "We make people while we make cars," and also "good thinking, good product." So if we can make people and have a connection to purpose, and that it's these twofold, both developing people and having a greater value in the world, that really will ignite people. Okay, the second trend that I'm seeing as we think about the future of work is something that's also been important all along, which is about having connections and rapport, both from leaders and managers having connections with their people, as well as team members having those connections, and the sense of connection together that we really amplify our abilities. And it's about understanding our humanness, this deep respect for people and our humanity. And we can do this by actually going to see and check on process, but also going to see that we show and we care about people. So this is the concept called "go to Gemba," or go to the place the work happens. And even in a virtual world, we can do this. We can go see and connect and engage with people to understand their work, help remove the barriers, and understand about them from a heart place. Okay, the third trend I'm seeing, and this is really important as we move into the future, because we're not going to go back to how things were before, is about having flexibility and adaptability. And by flexibility, this is in particular looking at the way we do our work. So no longer is the expectation, unless you're doing a physical work, that we need to be in an office space altogether at the same time. And so how do we rethink about how we're returning to office spaces? How do we engage with work? How do we do remote and hybrid in a way that's equitable for people and also still gets the work done while maintaining those connections and a connection to purpose? I think that there's some real important ways for us not to sort of be stuck in our old mindsets that work only happens in discrete, sort of 9 to 5 or set chunks, about how we can be more flexible about when and how work happens. And it's not just face time, it's the value and the impact that we're having. All right, the fourth trend in the future work that I'm seeing is we do need to continue to increase our innovation in how we can collaborate together. So these are tools and products that really help enable these core concepts of being flexible, having a connection to each other, and then a connection to purpose. But how can we stay on track? And all of these principles have been so important even before the pandemic, but it's really brought to the forefront about how we need to be envisioning these things in a different way. So project management tools, knowing who's working on what, how do we make especially knowledge work visible. So make the invisible visible. And how do we know who's on point for what? What are the goals? Of course, this was always important before, but we've had to think about new and creative ways. My whole team is dispersed around the globe. All different time zones. We're working on a lot of different projects together. And we found that having some different tools has really helped us stay in alignment and move together with work, even though we're not working the same time, the same pace, and in the same location. So it's possible, and we have to continue to invent and imagine even better ways for us to continue to collaborate together. And then the fifth trend that I'm seeing and have observed personally, and then also from my observations out in the working world, is the diversity, equity, and inclusion gaps that, in particular, the pandemic highlighted that were already there before, but many studies have shown, and I had this experience myself, of women being disproportionately impacted with childcare and homeschooling early days in the pandemic, when all of a sudden there was no more childcare, looking about how, not everyone had access to high-speed internet. And so how working from home isn't the perfect solution for everyone. And so how can we make sure that home environments also are not limiting people's ability to do work effectively? Interestingly enough, too, HBR came out with an article talking about how women and people of color actually wanted to retain more flexibility to work from home now, and that it was more white men who wanted to return to the office spaces. And so how do we not let that interest and the abilities for that also continue or to exacerbate different just equity in terms of how we think about promotions and who's performing at work and what that looks like. So just something to be paying attention to and be intentional about as we're reimagining and recreating, or creating for a new, I should say, the future of work as we're moving beyond the pandemic. And how do we retain connection to purpose? How do we retain connection to each other? How do we make the invisible visible? How do we have the tools to support collaboration? And how do we make sure that we're equitable in how we're thinking about how people can be performing and contributing in their work? So these are just a few of the top 5 trends that I'm seeing out there. I'd love to hear from you about the trends that you're seeing as you're thinking about the future of work for your organization, for your teams, and for yourself as well. It's certainly something that's been high on my mind. I encourage you to also check out my interview in Authority Magazine, as well as more of the information on my website, kbjanderson.com, and on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much, and let me know, what does the future of work look like for you? Thanks.